A lot of uncertainty, isn't there? I think that's the difficulty.
Short term, it's like perilous for people, like for teams, brands, and riders.
Enduro riders haven't been earning and don't earn UCI ranking points from those events, and therefore they don't have a value in that gravity team picture.
Who in the top 20 elites at that race had a sort of team structure lined up for 2025, and it was pretty dismal.
All right, we're joined by Ben and James from Misspent Summers. You guys have just launched your 2024 yearbooks, hurly-burly for downhill. Ben, you're going to hold it up? Yes, looking good. And then the world stage for Enduro. You got a copy of that handy? Very nice. And we thought it'd be a good time to get together, chat a bit about the 2024 season, and look forward a bit to 2025, because there's changes across the board. Both positive and negative, depending on how you look at certain things, I guess. But we'll start with downhill, and the races are covered in incredible detail in the books. You've got the anatomy of a track section where Chris Kilmurray digs into the track. You've got like results analysis and points breakdown, and then these lovely long kind of, I guess, photo and written essays from different people that were at the events, kind of talking through everything that went on there. They're super fun to go through, but some of the things in the book that I really enjoy and really stand out for me are the articles between the races, which pick up on themes and important stuff that was going on throughout the year. The first of those in Hurly Burly is written by Dan Roberts, James, where he talks about some of the bike technology. And we did see a lot this year. Like there was a lot of on-bike suspension control with like Flight Attendant, Fox Live Valve, Loic and Finn's magic buttons. We've seen tuned mass dampers causing all kinds of puzzling towards the latter half of the season. Talk us through a little bit your view on the electronic side of things this year, because it's been a key theme.
Yes, another level in in the sort of fight for hundredths of a second and fight for wins, obviously. But I guess downhill is a sport where it's just constantly progressing. There are very few regulations on what people can do with their bikes. And people are constantly finding inventive ways to either to battle literally for those 10th seconds or to find even a mental edge over the competitors. So you have some people, they'd start bringing out, like this year, like you said, and even last year, electronics onto their bikes. And then other people bring out something else, taking it up to the next level. And then later in the season, like you said, suddenly people are taking it back to mechanical advantages with the tuned mass dampers, which I don't understand whatsoever, but I know that, Chris, you do. I'm not sure that everyone understands what they are. So it's amazing always to see that with downhill, and obviously that trickles into enduro as well. That's getting more and more to that level as well, where there's more sort of telemetry and data logging. It's always exciting to see, and then to see how that potentially then moves into production bikes and the consumer stuff that we use as well. Or even this year, like you said, there's the RockShox riders. Some of them are using the Flight Attendant stuff, which actually has been on bikes before, and then you're getting pros using it in downhill, and seeing how they use that to their advantage. I think it's always fascinating to follow that.
Definitely,
and then to read, like you said, to read articles by someone like Dan Roberts, for example, who really does understand it. For us, that's a pleasure as well. We get these people to write these things, and they help explain all of that to us as well.
Yeah, super cool. And we've got an article in there, like some more people-focused stuff as well. So Nushli, who does all the kind of social online stuff for the syndicate, does an amazing job of it, wrote an article, Ben, about Ollie Davis getting the call to be a stand-in for Jackson Goldstone for the season, which is an insane amount of pressure for a young rider.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's it's quite a... It'd be pretty horrible to try and fill Jackson Goldstone's shoes. And I mean, he sort of ended up flying the flag for a lot of syndicate with issues that Laurie had throughout the year as well. And Nush talks us through like how the season went and how he sort of dealt with the pressures of joining such a big team. really interesting, and how he's overcome it. And see, like we met him at our Leger pop-up this year. Really happy-go-lucky kid as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And it seems like that's what he got back to, and that's what created the good results.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and a good stepping stone for him. I think he's on to more big things for next season, which is going to be exciting. And then Dan's back again talking about one of the stories of the season, I guess, which is like, I think the article's called Punching Above Your Weight, but it talks a lot about the Frameworks team and how much Nico and the crew have done with comparatively little in the grand scheme of things. And, you know, winning a world championship with Ace of Amet out of a hidden pit around the back of the Fox truck has got to be a highlight of that, and one of the coolest things I've seen this season.
Yeah, and obviously you've done quite a lot with those guys on your podcast. The thing that for me that's I think we talked about it a fair bit in the past in our books and other stuff that we've done. The sort of move potentially towards really, really custom downhill stuff. I guess there's also maybe fewer people buying downhill bikes means that there aren't as many constraints on making a production bike that's good for the consumer. And funnily, actually, like like you said, a tiny setup has gone and actually done that really well, and taken it to the very highest level. So for me, that's fascinating. And then there's also the disparity in, like you said, budgets and I guess how those teams are treated as well. Like you said, they're pitting out of a tiny little sort of backstreet setup in Enduro for Worlds, and it worked out.
Yeah, incredible to see, and I think big things for that team for next year as well, hopefully. Anna Newkirk stands out this year. I think it's fair to say she's the MVP of the 2024 season. She's got an insane amount of points in a year where teams need and want points. I'm assuming she could probably write quite a few zeros in the salary that she wants from teams, and she's going to have been popular in the off season. And you've got an interview with her and her teammate Abby from Beyond Racing, Ben, in Hurly Burly.
Yep, yeah. Along the same lines that James was just saying about these smaller teams with small budgets have actually done some amazing things. And she's, with the weird state of the future of teams, she's suddenly become probably one of the most valuable riders as kind of a free agent at the minute.
And to be fair to Anna, though, she would have been worth quite a lot, irrespective of whether the rules changed or not. Like, she had some incredible results. Like, really did turn it on this season.
Definitely, yeah. No, it's brilliant to see, and it's good to see like people on the smaller setups that run their own programs. They sort of get it. Running their own program means you can do what you want, and being on a bigger team, you sort of follow a different kind of structure, and it kind of works for people like her. And yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you can definitely put a rider in the wrong structure for sure. Like, you can be on the biggest team, and if that structure and that approach doesn't suit you, you might not perform. So yeah, super interesting to see where Anna ends up next year and how she gets on in a different setup. I wanted to focus on some of the images as well from the book. There's lots of incredible photography, I think, mostly from Seb, Boris, and I'm blanking.
Sven Martin.
Who's the other guy?
Seb, Boris, and Sven.
Good joke.
Sorry.
Good joke. Sven already loved that.
I wanted to start off with this shot of Tane in that pink outfit from Val d'Isère. It was an incredible comeback for Tane this season, but it's also been a comeback for numerous riders that have suffered over the last 12 to 18 months. Miriam Nicole has had a hard time. Anne-Marie Piron's had a hard time. Reese has come back. James, talk us through, because I think you've, as well as that imagery, you've got articles in there. I think Anna Björk, who does the social and online stuff for Comments on Muck-Off, obviously close to Anne-Marie and Miriam, she's written some stuff for Hurly Burly too.
Yeah, just quickly going back, just to name check. So it's Boris Bayer, Seb Sheck, and Sven Martin do almost all of the photos in our books and our online stuff as well. And not only that, but they're not just photographers, but they follow the whole circus around, and they have done for years. And they're so personally invested in the whole scene. So we're really lucky to have them working for us. But that was a good one with getting spent. Nice one. Yeah, with the injury comeback, I mean, I was thinking earlier, it was a funny one last year. Obviously, last year we moved to the new organizer and broadcaster with Warner Brothers Discovery. It was going into the unknown a little bit, and everyone was finding their feet in many different ways. And well, even before that and carrying on through that, some riders had been injured, and then last year a couple more riders big name riders got really injured and taken out for the season. So it was a bit of a funny year last year. Like, the stuff was changing. Suddenly a few familiar faces were missing, and then this year people got used to the rhythms a little bit more, I think, and we suddenly got all these riders back, and back to top form, like Tane and Miriam, Anne-Marie Pierron, Reece Wilson, Aaron Gwynn, even at the end of the season, back fighting for those sort of top results. That was cool to see, and it's like you said, it's just suddenly the pool of potential top riders goes up then, and the kind of interest on the sport. So seeing that happen was just amazing. And also just seeing, especially Tane, for example, just seeing those people, the way that they can have these horrendous injuries, because they really do rack them up, all of the top racers. And she obviously struggled for a long time to get back to speed and find the right sort of, I'm only guessing here, but it knocks your morale as well and your kind of mental approach to racing. To be able to fight through that and come back when it might have taken a year or more, of just being totally, presumably down in the dumps, and then to take it all the way back to the very top, especially at Val di Sole, which I think that's where she first won an Elite World Cup, and then she came back and she's back right up there again this year. That's great storylines, and that's kind of why we write all this in a book as well, because it's incredible following this racing, and these amazing people as well, and how they go through these ups and downs.
Yeah, and I think you've chosen photography from people like Sven that really capture the emotion, like what goes on. There's a photo, I'll try and show it here, of Anne-Marie Pierron finally, getting back to the top, and you can just see how much that means to him. And you've done a great job of capturing that emotion. There's a shot of Reece, just trying to find, where you can see the tears in his eyes. That's it, yeah. Giving a hug to someone there when he finally got back on the podium in Ludenville. So that stuff for me is super powerful. There's a wicked shot, Ben, of Eleonora Farina ripping down Leger in horrific conditions and taking her first win. That was another cool memory from the season.
Definitely, yeah. That shot you're thinking of, I think, is Seb Sheck. And Sven sent us a message the other day just saying that Seb shoots covers. All of his shots are just so perfect. And that shot's no different. It was really cool to see Eleonora Farina win in Leger. I think she said she's been racing for 10 years, racing World Cups, Elite World Cups for 10 years, and finally made it happen. And you could see the emotion when she did win and on the podium, which was great. I think we have some pictures of that in the book.
You got a wicked shot here of Loris winning world champs, which such a big thing for Loris, and hopefully some confidence going into the off season that can propel him to where we know he can be in 2025. But I thought it was really interesting, James. I did some very quick maths. Benoit Coulange has missed 2 gold medals by just 0.375 of a second, which just seems incredible.
Yeah, and he's probably the only rider who wouldn't ever talk about that. He's not out there saying, God, I deserve that win. He's so modest that it sort of flies under the radar until suddenly he's on top of the podium. But yeah, those, like you said, that's a total amount as well, isn't it? So I think it's 0.2 was the margin this year.
Yeah, and less
nothing
to Greg in Val di Sole, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible. Can I just go
Insane.
back? The photo that you showed of Amory in Val di Sole there, like that emotion. There was a funny moment last, like in 2023, obviously when he was injured and he'd broken his neck and missed the whole race. Well, started the first race and then obviously broke his neck and then missed the whole year. I remember seeing him in Leger. He popped into our pop-up there, and I just sort of said, "Oh, how you doing?" You know, and he just kind of went blank. You know, it was like he couldn't answer. He was just like, and I was kind of like, "Oh no!" And then to see that this year, like, you know, that's how much it meant. You know, obviously it's hard when you're coming back from a horrific injury, but that was months later, and he was obviously not in a good way, like still dealing with it. And then to see that come back around this year to being on top of the podium and then taking some massive wins. God, just inspiring stuff, I think.
There's a great article written by Anna Buick about the return to form of Miriam and Amory. And the photo up here of Amory, Sven, that was after his win in Val di Sole, I think. And Sven found him in the back of the truck, and he was just looking at his phone, watching a video that had been posted by UCI MTB World Series of him winning, and he was just taking had to just sit on his own and reflect on what had happened. And it's an amazing interview. If you find that on our Instagram, it's like a 10-minute sit down with Amory. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, Sven does a great job of getting under the skin of athletes in that kind of almost heat of the moment as they're like coming off the highs or lows of their races. It's there's always some interesting stuff there, so people should definitely check that out on your sites. Mm-hmm. There's some imagery, obviously, that captures this raw emotion, and there's imagery of the racing, but there's some more subtle imagery, and it also gets printed at scale as well, which I really like. There's this shot of don't know if we can see it here, but Benoit, after winning Ludenville, I think, like shot from behind where he's talking to the television crew, obviously for the live broadcast, everyone else nice and dressed and nice and clean, and him absolutely like filthy mud all up his ass. Like, I think it's just really cool, James, to see some of those mixtures of imageries, and some of the imagery is just more subtle but really tells the stories.
Yeah, there's all the little details. That's the thing with photography, I think. The videos and live broadcasts are amazing for seeing all the action, but then photography picks out those split seconds and those moments in time that kind of tell even more of a story sometimes, and you might not have noticed or might not have reflected on, and that's down to the photographer's eye, and then also a photo editor's storytelling as well. That's what I've always loved about great photography, and that's another reason why we do these books, is because we want it to live somewhere where people can really appreciate it, and we're probably our main target audience. You know, we want to see this stuff. That's why we make it. Unfortunately, lots of other people do as well, so we can actually carry on doing that.
In addition, not to that, on that photo, I think it's great that we are able in print to give that a double page spread as like just an individual moment, and in the book we can sort of give, like, it is like a little detail, but by printing that double page, it kind of allows it to, you can really read into the image and look at all the little details within the detail.
Yeah, that's totally true. Actually, if that was on Instagram, it wouldn't capture any attention, and you wouldn't really be able to work out why it was there and what the story was. But when you see it, you know, like in that size, it's very obvious, and yeah, you can look at what's going on and some of the other things in the picture. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool that those are getting that space. And someone, Ben, that definitely deserves some space this year, and I think it was a nice nod putting him on the inside of the back cover. Greg Minnaar finally retiring from World Cup racing, although I suspect we'll still see him line up at least one or two World Cups in the future. I can't see him totally not stepping up and doing that. But yeah, real nice nod to see him inside the back cover. I guess that was an important thing for you to feature.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's been one of the biggest stars of the sport for ever, pretty much. And yeah, I think I'll show you the picture. Yeah, it's quite a nice little exit shot of Greg. But like you said, I'm sure he's going to be at the races and potentially even lining up. Who knows?
Yeah, you never put it past him for sure.
And there is also a shot in the World Champs of his last ever World Champs as he crosses the line, which Sven was telling us about that a couple of weeks ago, to how he took the photo. Was he had to climb up a tree and he he was dangling out of it, and spent quite a long time, because luckily Greg came down a bit earlier so he could go and shoot a special shot just for that. So it's cool that, I mean, Sven's, well, all of them, they're super busy, loads of things going on, trying to shoot hundreds of clients, but also have time to go and think, I want to do something special for this moment. And I think that's what's great about the people that we work with on these.
Yeah, they're photographers and very, very good at that, but they're also huge fans of the sport with an immense knowledge and history that enables them to know when something's special and when it needs a bit more attention, which is, it's really cool. They do a fantastic job of that. James, let's talk a little bit about Enduro. So you've got the World Stage book covering the season. And I think the first thing for me was that there was a really different feel for me going through. I haven't read the books yet. They've been here like 2 days. So I've flicked through both and had a little dip into various bits and pieces. Apologies. I will read them cover to cover. Flicking through Hurly Burly, it was like a reminder and a nice, like, oh yeah, that happened, and oh, that's a cool image of that, and that's a nice story there. World Stage felt very different. Like I have consumed both sports throughout the year. I guess I probably am close to downhill because we do the pre and post race podcasts for that, so I do have to consume kind of every second of it. But I've had a good go at consuming Enduro, but I still felt like, to some extent, I was almost seeing some of this stuff for the first time, which was actually quite a nice feeling to go through and be like, it just felt a very different book to look at. So I'd recommend people that care about Enduro get a copy of it, because it's a really great, a really great recap and a nice thing to own. You do a similar thing, I think. So you've got like all the stories from the races and the analysis and everything that goes with that, all really well written with amazing imagery. And you've also got some articles that sit between. But I think that there's a bit of a different feel, James, correct me if I'm wrong, in World Stage to Hurly Burly. They seem a little bit more reflective, a little bit less geared specifically towards the racing. You've got like an article from Morgane Journier talking about blind racing, and she wasn't really feeling the way EDR was panning out, and that blind racing thing was more for her. You've got Matthew Fairbrother talking about finding comfort in discomfort, which sort of applies but also takes it to a bigger picture. Like, give us some thoughts on some of that stuff and like how you've approached World Stage a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, that was cool to read. You sent a little note before this, before we started recording, saying that. And that was actually, it was sort of surprising but nice as well to see that you are actually learning more about the series than you might have otherwise known. I think that does extend into down as well. He said you're potentially more focused on the downhill, so maybe that's partly why. But like you said, there's also probably more coverage of the downhill, especially this year. Or more readily available. So that was really cool to see. I think people can also get that same feeling from the downhill book, because not everyone follows the scene as closely as we do. I think that there's maybe a few reasons for, like you said, about the slightly different feel from the book. One of them's partly to do with the original concept of the World Stage, which was, when we started, the first year we did it was 2017, when it was the Enduro World Series. Obviously became the Enduro World Cup officially last year, but sort of same thing. But at that point, we saw the Enduro World Series as top level racing, high level racing, but also as this real element of adventure and going to all these amazing destinations and travel. And I think riders felt that as well. So we based the concept of the book around this kind of racing, but also travel diary. So that's why, like, we saw that there's a slightly different spirit in that stuff, Enduro, compared to downhill, which is 100% performance. Enduro's all about the racing, but then there's also this element, like you said, of adventure and travel. There's that, and then also this year, obviously, like there's kind of the vibe from the riders as well, with some people, like you mentioned, Morgane Journier's article about doing all the stage races, so multi-day enduro race, sort of itinerant races like Stone King, for example, and events like that, where you're racing for days in a row. I think there's a bit of a vibe where some people kind of like, okay, personally, I think the enduro races are brilliant at the moment. But yeah, some people kind of felt like the whole scene was maybe forgotten about a little bit by the broadcaster, even though actually they're doing some really brilliant coverage. I think it's maybe just not reaching as many people for whatever reason. So I think that's it. We're trying to always take the positive out of everything, and there's people doing amazing stuff. There's amazing enduro races going on around the world. The Enduro World Cups are really cool. We want to show off a little bit of everything, really, especially as the riders are diversifying into those events.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it depends, I guess, why you were doing Enduro World Series in the first place. Were you excited by the adventure and the travel? In which case, that's not been as exciting in the last couple of seasons, and you can understand why people might want to look for something different. If you're there more focused on the race experience and the kudos of competing at a World Cup, then obviously like that's the place for you to be. So it has created I guess a couple of different pathways for enduro athletes. And an athlete, Ben, who's I think a big friend of Misspent Summers and has been for a long time, Greg Callahan's got a cool little article in there, and it was a really interesting but really good year for Greg, like stepping away from a team structure, putting his own thing together, and it went pretty well.
Yeah, didn't it just? He's great. He's been, was it 2017? He won a World Cup. He won a World Cup in, I can't quite remember. Sorry, Greg. But yeah, I mean, he's been around since forever. Another Greg, actually, who's been around forever. Yeah, and I guess it was a risk. I think he mentioned that there was offers from teams, but this season he wanted to focus on build up his own program rather than the products he wanted to put together. He had a mechanic, he had a filmer, so he could produce media, and yeah, worked out pretty good for him. And he's written an article called "What If," and talks about all the what ifs in the world, and yeah,
oh, he's really cool. Good. I think he's one of the few riders who've been racing in the Enduro World Series and World Cup since 2013, when the first year of the Enduro World Series. And then we were talking about this just before it started recording, and I had a little panic that we'd written about the wrong person in the rulebook, but like you said, he hadn't been on the podium in 7 years, and then he added on all that pressure this year with having to build up his own team structure, and it's worked out. He's gone back to the top again, which is cool.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we see more riders going kind of that way and taking that approach in the coming years. I want to dig into some of the imagery in the world stage, and like there's some really good images of Hattie in here, and Hattie obviously had an incredible season. Like it was up and down in the overall between her and Isabeau, and I think Isa was leading coming into the last round, and then Hattie managed to clinch it. I'm pretty sure in the final stage there's an incredible shot of Hattie like covered in mud from Ludenville, like tears in her eyes. And it's just amazing to be able to capture those moments from the sport that are so pivotal and so important. But yeah, Hattie's been a force to be reckoned with, hey, James? Yeah,
and I think the level this year, there were so many people in the elite women's category battling for top results. I think there's a greater depth this year than ever, probably, for people who could potentially win. That was really cool to watch the whole year. And obviously my partner Morgan Shah's racing at that level, and she's there, so I'm obviously biased. I'll just put that disclaimer out there, but I'm probably even more kind of edge of my seat following the racing and thing, but definitely noticed that this year that there's a lot of, well, there's always all that talent's always been there, but everything clicked for more people, I think, this year, and it's probably a greater spread of riders who could potentially win or podium. So that was good fun to follow.
Yeah, that is true. There's a great shot here, Ben, of Isabeau Corderia, who steps away at the end of this season for a period of time at least. But that shot just reminded me how much of a badass Isra is, like the pink hair flowing, like such a cool rider to watch.
Yeah, totally. I mean, she's been another rider who's raced, I think, since the first year. She's been around the whole for years and took a while to find her groove, and then has dominated in the last 4 years of enduro. She raced some downhill in Mont Saint Anne this year, which was cool, which you can see on the cover of Hurly Burly. A little nod to that.
I hadn't spotted that. Nice. That's her hair. Yeah. Right. I thought it was some kind of graphic. That's cool.
Yeah. No, brilliant racer. I think, I don't know, I just saw on Instagram this morning of her riding a skateboard around a pump track, absolutely pinning it. So it proves she's just, like I said, total badass. Really cool. Hopefully we'll see her back as well. It sort of sounded like a bit of a semi-retirement, so it wasn't 100% hanging the boots up.
I've got an episode recorded with Izza that's going to be coming out in a few weeks, so we talk a little bit about that in there, so you can find out a bit more there. James, I wanted to talk about Alex Rodeo. It was like a good season for him, and he definitely made some steps forward. There's an amazing shot of him like using all the width of a track, pretty much riding up the base of a tree to like open a turn. I think it's been cool to see him, and I think another flat pedal rider like Morgan. Yeah,
flat pedal rider and trials background, like as a top French trials rider. And kind of on the world scene as well. Unbelievable seeing those bike skills, to be honest. But then there's one thing about like the trial skills, obviously incredible trial skills. See that transfer into speed as well is absolutely incredible. I do think do often see like riders with trials or BMX backgrounds. They can transfer that into mountain biking skills. So I think they just get this amazing base of technical ability, but still, is to then make that as a top racer as well. It's a whole different level. And like you said, there he's just basically wall riding a tree on the side of the track, to like in the greasiest, most horrible conditions you can imagine. That in Val di Fassa there at the World Championships, it's hard to actually imagine how greasy and horrible that is. And then the tree roots, there's lots of sections there where there's kind of flattish rocks and roots, and hard to keep your speed and get into positions like that on the track. But he takes it all in his stride.
Yeah, incredible rider.
We had Iago in the office just as we were finishing these books, and he pointed to that picture and just said, what is he doing up there?
It's an incredible line, yeah.
And as Iago is such an amazing bike rider, it shows that he's nuts.
He's doing special things. Yeah, and you mentioned the World Champs, James. It was the first opportunity for you to have a World Champs section in the world stage, which is a huge thing, right? There's so many riders in that group that have been waiting and waiting and waiting for there to be a World Champs, and the weather tried to stop it almost. But fair play to the organisers. I think they had people up on the tracks, clearing all the tracks to make sure that things were rideable as much as possible and get a race to actually happen. It must have been quite a privilege to be in a position to document that for the first time.
Super cool. I think that was part of, I said earlier about different vibes, like with riders and teams and stuff on the Enduro since last year. I think one thing people were kind of expecting Enduro World Champs last year, and it didn't happen. And then this year, thought it was going to happen. There was no talk about it. There was no sort of official announcement about it until suddenly, I think it was in July, it was confirmed. And oh man, that made such a big difference to riders, to morale and like spirit. And it's such a big deal having a UCI, an official UCI World Championships for a discipline. That's a really big deal for people, for their careers and like for goals as well. And then it was in a couple of months' time, really, and the organisers just put on probably one of the best enduro events we've ever seen.
You were there, right?
We were there, yeah, and we were there freezing. Ben was camping in his van. which isn't very well insulated. It's literally freezing. It was minus temperatures and quite a lot of snow earlier in the week. And the organisers, they could have just given up, and that would have been fine, I think, considering the circumstances. But instead, they sent out 100 volunteers with shovels, and they all went and dug the trails out. They'd already had a contingency day in the plan in case it was bad weather, so they just moved that. That was kind of pre-planned, just in case. I gave them an extra day to work on the tracks and then lower the start heights down a little bit. And that's cool. That's just the sort of care that some of those organisers put into these events. And I think there were some brilliant events this year for Enduro, like Aletsch as well in Switzerland, absolutely fantastic. Which is a good sign because the World Champs is there next year. And they really, both those venues, they had this really good vibe in the Finnish area, which sometimes doesn't really exist, which is fair enough because sometimes the races are really far out, and it's more about the racing and the riding than that. But they'd managed to create this sort of great infrastructure. Even in the Enduro Worlds, when the top riders crossed the line, there were fireworks and stuff like that. It was cool. It looked like a cool event. It felt like a really cool event. And despite the tricky weather conditions, they managed to make it happen.
Yeah, that is impressive. Ben, it turns out the French are pretty good at Enduro, eh?
Turns out, yes. Yeah, I think they took all 4 gold medals at World Champs. I'll just add on to what James was saying about the organisers in Val di Fassa. I think they had 700 hand warmers ordered in for the marshals, and it's really good to see that they're taking care of everyone. And one of the organisers is telling us that they've got the A plan, B plan, C, D, E. Like they have to be able to make the event work, which is why it turned out in like still a really good event, even though they didn't race all the stages that they were hoping to, or full length stages. But yeah, French riders at World Champs were pretty good.
Always have been, right? The French and World Champs, there's always something that clicks, and they've always been able to elevate on the World Champs Day. I don't know what it is, but there's always something that goes on there.
Yeah, there was 12 potential medals across Enduro and e-Enduro, and they took 8 of them.
Insane.
So, yeah, pretty amazing. And like Ben said, all the titles as well.
Yeah. Pretty wild, pretty wild. I want to talk... go on, Ben.
I was going to say, you can see like in Isabeau's emotion at the finish, and Alex Rideau's, that just how much it meant to them as well. It was tears, it was rolling around on the floor, celebrations. Some fantastic shots of Alex.
Like I said, that event as well is at the end of the season, and it's recognition for the discipline as well. And it's like, okay, because there's a lot of rumour. I think Warner Bros. Officially don't respond to rumours. I think which is fair enough. But people have been rumouring, sort of no series next year and stuff like that, and that's got everyone's morale down. And then to have that Enduro World Champs announced, and it be a really good event right at the end of the year, that's put everyone back on the right track, I think.
Good. Yeah, a bit of a morale boost for everyone involved. Yeah,
it was a much more positive feeling at the final race this year compared to Chatel the previous year. It was a lot of like at Chatel, the race itself on the track, everyone was loving it, but in the paddock it was just quite a negative environment to be.
Yeah, it wasn't a nice vibe, was it? Yeah.
No, but this one, everyone was freezing, so people moaning about that, but everyone was super positive. It was just like, and yeah, like James said, it felt like Enduro's alive. It's going places. So.
Good. That is great to hear that insight. Appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the book related logistics. One of the biggest decisions I guess you have to make is cover shots, and you're spoilt for choice, I'm guessing, right? You've got 3 incredible photographers that you have access to their imagery from a year's worth of shooting. James, talk us through how you approach choice of cover shot.
Ben does most of it.
Go on then, Ben, talk us through
it. Well, it's probably the hardest part of the whole book, because what do they say about judging a book by a cover? Everyone
Yes.
does. No, it's, sometimes like this shot of Jesse, it just saw it and got to try it. So when we're just going through the books, we put a folder together of just rad shots and don't try not to think too much about it, because as soon as you think about it lots, it becomes the impossible decision to make. So then we have a folder full of 10, 15 photos that are just ace, and Chris, designer, puts designs them into the cover, and we then discuss as a team and get some outside input, and that's the point. We discuss who, like in terms of who the rider should be as well, because that comes into not just a cool photo, it's got to be someone relevant to the sport. So I mean, Jesse, crowd, blue sky, looks rad. Finn Isles on the cover as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I spotted Finn in the crowd, which is cool in itself, and I was like, is that Finn's first Misspent Summers cover? I had to check back, but he did have one as a junior on Hurly Burly back in the day. So second cover for Finn, good work.
Yeah,
I think that
Ben makes stuff sound and look quite easy, but there's literally tens of thousands of photos, and you have to choose one that represents the sport well, fits on that in a rectangle on the front. Fits well in that shape of cover, because a lot of them are shot landscape, and that's obviously a portrait format. Works well with the logos, for example. Something that's going to jump out at people, something who's relevant. It's something that makes the sport look good as well. It's a big job. It does most of that.
Yeah, I think World Stage does that really well. Like it takes enduro at its very best, right? You've got a crowd line stage, the sun's out, Jesse's absolutely on the limit. Like it really does capture enduro in its best format. I think, Ben, that one, it's cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We sort of had discussions at the point when we have a couple of options. There was another option of a really small rider with a massive background landscape, and we were discussing what is enduro, what shows off what this is all about. I think we decided that it's still very much about the racing and the fans. The other shot maybe would be great on an adventure book that we were deliberating over.
We had a really cool cover last year, right, with Richie Rude. That's kind of what it was last year, right? And it was really nice, super cool. I think that is inspiring as well. But yeah, this one shows what it can be as well. Just, I don't know, like, because it is always astounding standing on an enduro track and seeing how those people ride the tracks, almost blind. They might have done one run on it, or they might have ridden it in the past, the track, but barely know what's coming up. And they're so on the limit, and they're on these tiny bikes. Remember the first time in 2013, in the first, sorry, tangent here, but the first time I sort of saw that was in 2013 at the, I went to quite a few of the Enduro World Series races in that first year. But the last one was in Finale as well. Funny enough, and I was standing on a trail that I knew quite well, with just horrible Capozoppa in Finale, if anyone knows it. Horrible rock sections on a really steep hill, high consequences, like really tight trees. Everything's horrible about it. And I just saw Jerome Clements ride over like a ton of boulders, basically, but at 100 miles an hour. Like this, I would have just gone over the bars straight away on the first one. He rode straight through all these rocks, like no problem, and barely knowing where he's going. And I just thought, oh my God, I've seen loads of downhill races and been around loads of downhill races, but to see that, I think you have to be there as well to sort of really appreciate how nuts that is when you see enduro riders riding really technical stuff at that speed. It's harder to translate probably to video because a lot of it's in tight woods. But yeah, stand by the track and watch them ride, and you're like, okay, this is like easily some of the best mountain biking you'll see.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, if you've not been to an Enduro World event and you've got the chance to go, it is well worth it. And it's cool because you get a bike ride, right? You can ride around all day, check out all the stages. Like you can actually combine riding with watching racing, which is cool. It's a bit different to a downhill. Go on then, Ben. Talk us through Valley for the Hurly Burly cover, because this is cover number 2 for Valley. She was on the front cover 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, that's correct. With just there
in the background.
Yeah, Hurly Burly. It's slightly different. Well,
yeah, a bit more
different
collage.
in terms of what imagery. Arguably, it's easier because we don't have to just choose one image. But then that also brings in a load of other issues. Is do the images actually work together? Which hopefully they do in the end. Valley. I mean, she's incredible. It's had another, I think, is that the third world champs in a row, and she's also won the overall and world champs this year. I think that's correct.
Yeah, it's pretty deserved, isn't it?
Yeah,
but there's a lot of good Valley shots, I would imagine.
There are a lot of good Valley shots. This one's ace. Got dust. There's a lot more shots that are in the selection options for Hurly Burly covers, because I think it is much more like the head-on race shots, and everyone's looking extremely dynamic all the time. So it's quite difficult, very difficult to choose. But yeah, team decision on.
Like I said, Ben whittles down tens of thousands of photos to quite a small selection. Still big enough for it to be become a team nightmare, not just a single. But that one, I literally out of all the photos, that one straight away just stuck in my head as the shot that really worked on the cover, I think.
There's definitely a no mess approach to Valley's eyes in that. Like, she's there for business and nothing else. Like, you can tell there's an energy and a focus in those eyes that's almost scary. Like, you wouldn't want to be up against that.
Yeah, and it shows how fast and, like Ben said, dynamic the sport is. And she's got the number 1 plate on the bike and stuff like that. It's just like really cool, perfect shot.
So like James was just saying that he saw this and immediately was like, that's great. At that point, I feel quite blind to photographs. It's quite hard to see things, and I've justified things in my mind as to why we should put it on the cover, and it's really good to have fresh eyes at that point. And it's like first reactions, fresh eyes, much more. That really helps make the decision, basically, because pondering is the killer of choosing a cover photo.
This year, we got such a cool team, with especially Marcella, who we've been working with a couple of years, but she's been way more full time than she probably gets paid for on this year. And then also with Theo in the office and Archie who's there, and then there's Chris and Harriet in the design team. So it's quite good to have quite a complete team there for people to, I guess, weigh in with their opinion. Probably actually make it harder for Ben to choose a cover, really. But in reality, I think it's good. Yeah, it's good to have an opinion of and reaction of a lot of people who have dedicated a lot of time to looking at these things.
Yeah, and you guys rely on the support of the people that buy the books, and I think it's important that I give you the opportunity to shout out your super supporters. So that's the thing you've been doing the last couple of years, James, and I think you've had a massive uptake in that, and they've all got their names printed inside the books, which is cool.
Yeah, I'll just list them off now if that's right, Chris.
All 100 and whatever of them. Yeah,
yeah, no, it was amazing this year. So we do have this amazing group of people who follow all our stuff, and it's nice. From time to time, we get replies to newsletters and obviously messages on Instagram and stuff like that from people just with ideas or supportive words as well and stuff like that. And lots of people who buy our stuff, which is super nice. So we just did this year. We did it last year, and we kind of hid it a little bit just to see. We wanted to kind of see who's looking and see if people want to buy a sort of big bundle pack of stuff, and people did, which is really nice. So we made it a bit more official this year, and yeah, nice to have 100 or so people sort of sign up and show their support by putting in, you know, pretty serious amount of money for anyone really, to get our books and t-shirts, a couple of t-shirt, well, a t-shirt and a hat and mug and stuff like that. So we printed all their names in the front of both books because we couldn't do it without those people. We couldn't do it without all of the purchases, and then especially with the support of a really core base. That is how we do it. We got support from brands as well, obviously, and if we didn't have the brand support, the books would cost like 100 quid each. You know, we couldn't do it without that, and we can't do it without the growing base of people who are really helpful and supportive and put their own money into our projects. So that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Let's look forward to 2025 and talk about some of the stuff, some of the changes and things that are going on. We'll start off with Enduro. Isabeau obviously stepping away for the foreseeable, and women's Enduro has often been dominated, as was DH in the past. Like I think we had a period of Anne-Caroline Chasson, then Tracy Mosley, Cecile Ravenel, Isabeau. Hattie is kind of maybe in that position where she could do the same, but I'm guessing she's going to have some tough competition. And I would avoid asking James about this because he's obviously biased towards Morgan. But Ben, what do you think? Do you think Hattie can walk away with it, or do you think it's going to be a challenge? There's a lot of people that want that top spot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is super interesting how it's happened over the whole lifetime of Enduro. Is that there has been a dominating force within the racing, but I mean, it'd be interesting to see what's going to happen. I think like this year the racing was crazy tight in the elite women, and we saw quite a few different winners. A lot of return to form from racers. So I'm not sure if we'll see one rider dominate. There seems to be a good mix of races that do suit certain racers, and maybe the race format is getting to a point where it's not the races don't just suit one person. So yeah, I think there's likes of Ella Connolly, there's Mel Pujan, Morgan Shah, Hattie, plenty of others of racers that are up there fighting for wins, and so it'd be good to see lots of people winning.
Definitely, yeah. It's always good when there's a bit of a mixture and there's no one running away with it, which there definitely wasn't this year. And James, a big change for next year: no EEDR. So maybe the book gets a bit thinner, or you can give a bit more focus to the non-e-bike discipline. Thoughts on the move away from that? It seems kind of strange in a way because it feels like that's been almost prioritized, certainly in schedule, above the regular Enduro, and certainly in this season, maybe a bit in the season before, but that's going away for 2025.
Yeah, mixed emotions really, because it's people aspire, there are people that are aspiring to that and racing it, and it's their career. So take it away, that's never a good thing, is it? I don't know what the people who are racing full time in Enduro, they've got to obviously reevaluate what they do next year. So that side of it's not cool. But then for the actual Enduro racing side, I think it was a good move. I think they did. That was also sort of listening to the riders a bit, which was cool. Because this year I think they tried to make it so that EDR races, so analog bike racers, could race their race and then race the e-bike race as well. They're trying to sort of incentivize them by putting the enduro race first, and then having usually especially if it's a downhill race as well, having a break, maybe a day off, and then the e-bike race, in the hope that all these people would suddenly start racing the e-bike race, because it's someone, you look across the season and of the EEDRs, e-bike races, and sometimes it'd be 10 people racing in the women's category and fewer than 50 in the men's. Like, so they're trying to get more people in there, so that's fair enough. It just didn't really work out. And actually it turns out that racing either of those races is a massive challenge in itself, physically and, you know, with preparation and stuff. So some people did do both at certain events with some success, which is cool. But yeah, taking out of the equation means that they can really focus on building enduro back up, making sure it's on days that are on the weekend or at least closer to the weekend. There's quite a lot of combined downhill and enduro races next year. So again, it's still a challenge. I think it will probably still be a challenge for the organisers and for racers and teams and for media to cover all of it, probably to the level that it deserves. But it's better. It's a step in the right direction, I think. So,
that's good to hear. Yeah, we hear rumours of quite a lot of big bike brands stepping away from running enduro teams at a World Cup level, and I guess there's a couple of things that play into that. There is the lower amount of coverage, like the return on investment, I guess, that they're getting from putting those teams up there. There's the, I guess, like downwards negative spiral that's sort of surrounded enduro, which I think everyone has a level of involvement in, right? We've all been guilty at points on that. Everyone from the riders through to the organisers, through to the fans, through to the teams, like we haven't maybe done our best to kind of big it up and put it on the pedestal that it should be on, myself included. And and then the industry kind of challenges, right? Like everyone's strapped for cash. The brands are having a hard time, and we've got more downhill rounds, which is great, but obviously that means the downhill team budgets needs to go higher. So if you're running a downhill and an enduro team, you know, it kind of makes sense that money gets put towards downhill. I can see why that's happening, but it does mean maybe fewer teams. It means maybe riders with less support. But I guess riders like Greg Callahan have shown what can be done, you know, working a little bit outside the normal box of being on a regular team. Ben, give us some thoughts from your side on how you see enduro for 2025. Do you think we're going to be okay without all these big teams on board?
I think we'll be okay. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in there. I think that's the difficulty, and that coupled with the bike boom and bust, and I think brands are scared of any form of uncertainty. I am not sure what teams will be on the start line next year, but also I guess the fact that the race series is staying roughly the same. They haven't added lots of races, so it will be possible to do things like Greg has done. And I guess I'm assuming everything will recover, and nothing's really confirmed on which teams will or won't be there. There will be a few that have already said they're not going to be racing. But I think there's still going to be support.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And James, there's an added complexity to all of this. Obviously, there was the new rulebook that came out, I don't know, a month or so ago, which created some hoo-ha and some debate. And it's, as with most rulebooks, they're quite hard to decipher. Like, the language is not always particularly easy to follow. And this rulebook's had a lot of updates over the years, and I think it just gets kind of more confusing with each update rather than having it fully rewritten. And one of the biggest things, and we can talk about it when we talk about downhill, but there's this need for points in order to become a UCI World Series team and be in that top 15 chunk. And I think initially they've obviously combined enduro and downhill into this gravity category. And I think when I read the press release, I thought to myself, okay, well, enduro riders have a value in this because they will have UCI ranking points. And there's a value to the gravity teams in having enduro riders to get points and status. So teams like, I mean, YT, I guess, is a good example in that they have a big downhill team with high-profile riders. They also have high-profile enduro riders. Surely they're going to have a lot of points. I think it's become clear over the last couple of weeks that enduro riders haven't been earning and don't earn UCI ranking points from those events, and therefore they don't have a value in that gravity team picture that is getting a lot of focus, certainly from the downhill side. Again, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, really, but it sort of takes enduro riders out of that equation a bit. Am I understanding that in the same way you are?
Yeah. I'm still trying to understand all of it. I think that's the thing with anyone. I think one thing I'd say is that just whatever the case, when real information decisions are announced, that helps.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that they've announced some changes, at least people can organise their lives and their sort of team budgets and stuff like that. Ben and I sort of took it upon ourselves at the Waldwasser Enduro Worlds to go to the after party and search out all the real stories. And at that point, I mean, nothing had been announced about calendars or the sort of structure for 2025. And there were a few downbeat people, and we're kind of looking through the result sheets, then sort of looking at who in the top 20 elites at that race had a sort of team structure lined up for 2025, and it was pretty dismal. But pretty much, yeah, and like we said, a few people had loosened up, and they were probably not too happy about that. But since then, from what we're hearing, there's been announced the calendar confirmed, and this sort of changes to structure. And I think it sounds like a lot more people in Enduro anyway are signed up to sponsor deals or teams, and then teams are making more decisions. So I think that just shows how important it is to give out confirmed information so these teams can organise themselves. But with the Enduro points thing, it's a bit, again, don't know anything because I don't think it's really been officially confirmed one way or the other, but it doesn't sound like there's any sort of UCI ranking for Enduro. So yeah, how does that then contribute to the gravity team overall status, and how's that work? I don't know. I don't know how many times I've had the conversation now with different people, and the same people trying to get our heads around what's going on, and then we always just come to the same conclusion, like, actually we don't really know. We don't know because we don't know. So yeah, again, just I don't know if anything that's confirmed and announced and real sort of hard information makes everyone's lives easier.
Definitely, yeah. I guess the challenge was that information came, I think it's fair to say, a lot later than would have been useful for people. Like, there's a lot of people whose livelihoods and careers, beyond the races, there's a whole circus of people that, travel with this sport around the world, or whose livelihoods rely upon it. And it's been tough. I think that I've spoken to people in both the enduro and the downhill side of things who've had a pretty tough few months or season, really, because if you don't know whether you've got a job next year or any income, it's not a nice place to be, and it is hard. But on the flip side, I guess there's been a lot of organisation and change, and I'm guessing putting rule changes through the UCI is not the most straightforward process, and that it needs sign off at various different levels. So there's all sorts going on, and to be honest, I'm glad that I don't have anything to do with that, because I wouldn't want to have that job. But yeah, I think it is confusing, and I think it continues to be a bit confusing. Like, the rule book, I've spent quite a lot of time trying to get my head around it, and I don't think I fully understand it. And luckily, I don't rely on that too heavily, but for some people they do. So it is a challenge, and hopefully they're getting the support they need from either the UCI or Warner Brothers to help them get through that, and this process of 15 teams plus 5 wildcards for downhill gets resolved, and we get a good chunk of people in the right places doing the sport that we love. But let's talk a little bit more about downhill specifically, Ben. And I wonder if 2025 is going to be the year where the youngsters really overthrow the older generation of riders. I think we've got Jackson and Jordan are both back riding now. Jackson raced a one-up race in Canada, and I think won by like 15 seconds or something. Jordan's back on the bike and in training. Lockie was clearly on a tear at the end of the season, and has lost the win in Monster by such a small margin that he's going to be busy this off season. We've got hopefully Asa, Max and Tyler, okay, still in juniors, but the elites know they're coming and that they're hot on their tails. So that puts a lot of pressure on. I think it could be a really interesting season to see how that lot go on. And then we've got some fast riders as well, moving up from junior women into elite women, I think, with Sasha, Eris. It's going to be cool to see how these younger riders threaten not the old guard, but like the kind of generation above.
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to ask which generations are riders from, really, because it's
it's blurred, right?
It's very blurred. Like, I mean, like Bruni is he arguably the established, maybe not the old guard, and he's not going to be wanting to give up his top spot very easily. But there's Amory, I guess. I'm not sure where he fits into the he's medium guard.
I see those guys have been around a while and they've been winning for a while. Like, I see that they're the riders that are getting challenged by this like up and coming generation of riders that maybe ride a little bit differently. They've grown up with very, very good bikes from a very young age, and they've had facilities as well that maybe like didn't exist in the early days of Loic and Amory's time, right? Everyone's got access to uplift, amazing tracks, great suspension, like, and these kids have had that a long time.
Yeah, totally. And I think how I'm talking about Amory is that he's kind of been, he came up and sort of dethroned Loic a little bit, and he was really battling with it. And he's sort of he's been injured for the last couple of years with on and off things, and been off for a whole season with his broken neck, where he hasn't really been fighting with the new guard of Jackson. So he's going to be that's going to be a super interesting battle, because he's wanting to reclaim his spot. Jackson, who knows what he's going to do? He's insane. And then there's the newer guard of Asa and the Allrun brothers, who they've come out I mean, Asa's been on people's radar for quite a while, but the Allruns have sort of burst on the scene, or at least into my world this season, and challenging top times in the elites as well. So there's like this massive meld of talent, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting in the elite men. Elite women, women's racing in general, it's been loads of different winners again this year. With I think we've had 4 different winners counted up earlier. So there's no domination like we have seen in the past, and like you said, the Eris, the Sasha Ernest, loads of really good talent coming from New Zealand. Be good to see. I think there's Ellis Vegby in the junior women. She didn't race that many, but was still sitting in the top 5 in the overall. I think there's a lot of untapped talent in that, and perhaps the new team structures of next year will be able to foster a lot of that talent, because there's fewer teams, and teams are going to have multiple riders just in case things like Jackson's injury happens. Yeah. Suddenly the syndicate's points were not as they'd expected.
Yeah, so I guess it's worth pointing out there is an incentive to teams not only to have points at the start of this year to get that UCI World Series status and get into the guaranteed 15. There's also an incentive for them to make sure they've got good points in October 2025 when they start to get tied in for multiple year deals in the way the sport rules are progressing. So having a big enough team that if you lose 1 or 2 riders, which let's face it, a few teams have done through injury or illness, you could easily you'd be there for 2025 and then lose the opportunity to be there for 26 onwards, and it's going to make that hard. So there is an incentive, which I think is cool for riders, to bring in for teams to bring in more riders, which hopefully means we'll see more of this young talent on the big teams. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out for sure. James, we're going to say goodbye to 5-rider podiums. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Like, I don't think I care, and that sounds pretty harsh, but I'm there for the racing, not for the podium. So that part of it was irrelevant to me in a way. I think for brands and riders, it's a shame not to have that 4th and 5th step exposure. I saw Loic yesterday talking about this and mentioned his win bonuses now only go down to 3rd, which he's obviously disappointed about. But like, I genuinely, I mean, I think the reasoning behind it that we've been told is that other sports have a 3-person podium and it's confusing. I don't think it's confusing. I don't really understand. I think it could be 5 or 3 and it doesn't make any difference.
So I mean, stuff changes, doesn't it? And you kind of get used to it. Like you said, we aren't on podium bonuses, so it doesn't affect us as much. And yeah, it would change people if you obviously look back historically at how many podiums Greg Nars got, for example. You know, it would change his stats quite dramatically if you said it's only top 3, for example. It's a funny one. I mean, change is always. It's always a funny one, isn't it? Likewise, I like the 5-person podium. I think it's part of the identity of the sport and why you get rid of it. It hasn't always been like that. We've referenced this a few times on newsletters and stuff. Like Martin Whiteley wrote an article for us in 2016 or 17, I can't remember, about the start of the 5-person podium sometime in the 90s where there's a race and there was a local rider in the top 5. And they actually asked for a special, change the rules so that 5 people could go up on the podium because it was such a big deal for that local community hosting the race. And that just stuck. Everyone loved it and it stuck. And that became, like you said, the identity of downhill podiums. My personal opinion is like, so what if other sports have got 3-person podiums? It's, you know, I don't see what's confusing about it really. So yeah, I don't know. At the same time, it's people going up. I think it is good to have more people on there because it celebrates more people and like all these people are out there putting everything on the line. And if it helps incentivize sponsors as well because they're getting more coverage on those podiums, then that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, fair comment. Ben, no more protection for 2025. What do you think to that?
I think that seems good. From everything I've heard from racers, everyone seems quite excited about that. Even racers that would be benefiting from that. Like Bruno's video that he put out a few days ago, or whenever this goes out, a few days ago. That was like he sounded very positive about removing protection. It should make things more exciting. And with the new last chance qualifier, there is a level of protection for those top racers that, there's a second chance. Yeah,
no, I think that makes total sense. And then James, like, it is going to be harder to get into, which I think most people in the sport are broadly speaking behind, in that I think everyone recognises the fact that there's too many people at a World Cup on track, which causes all sorts of problems, and that, you know, we should make things harder, but it is going to be a challenge. So top 50 riders can get in unless they're on an official team. And then obviously we've got these limits to teams, which I think, again, this year it just comes down to the lateness of that ruling being clarified. And I think teams are applying for a deadline in January and then find out 3 weeks later in early February whether they've got one of those 15 places or 5 wildcards, which is really late and pretty rough, I guess, for a lot of people. But after that, it should bring some stability, and then from October 25 onwards, we get even more stability, I guess, in that teams can opt in for multiple years with having enough points.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea long term. Like you just said, I think it's short term. It's like perilous for people, like for teams, brands, and riders. In some senses, I think there's riders have a good bargaining chip at the moment. Riders with points, they can carry into new team structures. That's a really good bargaining chip for their salary probably for next year. But at the same time, it works both ways. In January, or whenever it's going to be, end of January, when they actually say who the official sort of listed teams in that sort of guaranteed top 15 is, who knows, a rider might have signed up for a team and then suddenly they're not in that, and then you've got potentially a top rider who doesn't necessarily have a team structure at all of the races. So it's kind of it's a sort of high stakes moment for everyone. Again, announced it a year ago or 2 years ago, and maybe people would have said, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a challenging one for sure. But I guess we can speculate as much as we like. And I think every team has got their own spreadsheet and trying to work out where they sit based on who they signed and who they think everyone else has signed. So you can get to some extent, if you're if you're clearly in the top 10, you're probably pretty confident. If you're clearly below 20, you probably know that it's not a goer. But for everyone that sits in that sort of 10 to 20 space, it's going to be hard to know. And then you've got this, like the wild card thing adds a little bit more opaqueness to that whole thing as well, because it's not going to be, you might be 16th to 20th, but you still aren't guaranteed to be in a 5 wildcard slot.
And actually, just going back, I didn't really answer the bit about sort of cutting down the numbers a little bit. It's funny, Ben mentioned a video that Lo Bruni put out so I was trying to explain stuff for next year, which is obviously he's super informed and has much more authority than any of us do. But even he starts explaining the changes, and then he goes into a little bit more of speculation because he doesn't really know. But he says about the top 50 thing. So there's, in the men's, there's 50 spaces or whatever, and if you're in the top 50 UCI rankings, then you can race these races. But he says, and this is Loic Bruni speaking, he's saying that that's really hard to be in the top 50. That's like a really high bar to set, and that it can constantly change as well, like that sort of ranking. So yeah, it's narrowing down the number of riders, and like that might make organisation a bit slicker and stuff. Like people always reference to chairlift in Leger, that you get these enormous queues. It's crazy because there's so many people and it's a slow chairlift. That maybe it might help stuff like that as well. But yeah, it's a confusing time. I'm not a mathematical person, and I'm glad I'm not a team manager or a rider at the moment, cause trying to figure out like what might be happening next year for them.
I'm a mathematical person, mate, and I have still got no idea what's going to happen. So I think I've given up trying to read the rulebook now. I'm going to step away and I'm going to just wait and see what happens on once racing kind of starts next year, and see who's there and who's racing. And I think a big part of this, Ben, is going to be this mysterious Continental series. Like, we need, for those people that can't race World Cups anymore, and for those people that want to work their way up to racing World Cups, because you're not just going to be able to jump in, as you did in the past, we need this Continental series in place. And as at the time we're recording this, 14th of November, I'm pretty sure there's no information out there on that unless there's been a press release in the last hour.
Quickly going back to what James was saying about the numbers, I think that we're increasing the number of female racers, which is a good thing. So that's good to see. So there's a step in the right direction in that respect. A Continental series, I find that quite exciting, actually. The whole concept of that, I think it could be really good. It kind of downhill World Cups have changed quite a bit over the years, and they have become much more professional. And maybe it is the time to step that up again and make it solely professional, polished, high grade. And this Continental series could be mates travelling around in vans, and that's a lot of what I loved about World Cup downhills in the early days, was that it was a car park full of mountain bike reprobates. And I think that's something that could be really good in terms of a community and a vibe and a thing that people could really fall in love with. Obviously, we'll need some coverage, I think. So there's some big question marks about coverage of that and how it's going to be organised. Could be done really, really well and could be very exciting. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, watch this space. James, hurly-burly, 10 rounds next year in a World Champs. Is it going to be thicker and is it going to be more expensive? The big questions everyone wants the answer to.
I was going to say yes, frankly, yes. But, I mean, it'll... Probably not. No, I mean, the thing is, like, making a book is that it's a finite number of pages. When you have a website and a web page, you can just keep going on and on and on and on as much as you want, and it doesn't really have a consequence. But with the books, we have a set, there is sort of logistically and financially, there's sort of usually a number that we can get to with page count, based around like what we can post out and that sits in certain weight categories. And obviously, the more pages you do, the more it costs to do that stuff. So that's a force of the hand to probably keep it a similar page count next year, and we'll just have to go for fewer pages for each round, which is sometimes that sort of thing's a blessing in disguise because it just forces us to whittle stuff down even more. And then sometimes it actually makes images and stories shine even more when you've just been forced to sort of work on it until it's the most important bits and makes all the stories really shine. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, overall it will be more expensive because our photographers and writers have to go to loads more races. We're really fortunate that everyone who does work for us, they're getting paid by brands or teams or riders or whatever normally to go to these races. So actual travel expenses and stuff like that, we're really fortunate that it costs us when we go, but for most of the contributors, it might not affect us as much. Having said that, some of them have told us already that they might struggle to get to the races next year, even some of the really ones who are really key contributors. So we might have to figure out how to actually start funding that properly. So it's going to get more expensive. Yes. Yeah. But the book price will probably stay pretty much the same.
The travel for next year, I started looking at accommodation and travel, minutes after the calendar was issued into my inbox. And everything was already insanely expensive. So for me next year, I don't know how many I get to, but we'll do what we can to get there. Logistics, I guess. I mean, Loic picked up on in his video, he thought it was a little bit janky and didn't make total sense. Like there's a big 6-week gap, and then you've got, I think, Ludenville racing Sunday, back to back with Leergang racing Saturday, and it's like a 17-hour drive between the two. So those sort of things maybe not optimal. And I think they're making your job a little bit harder every year. It's like I think that Monson and race has crept back a week every year. So you've got 1 week less next year, James, to get everything ready. Do you still confident you can get the books out? You seem to be getting slicker every year and getting them out a little bit earlier.
We're getting better and better. Like we've always had a really big pool of contributors, and then this last couple of years we've had people working on stuff all the time, especially Marcelo, like working with the commissions, like reporting and editing throughout the year. So that meant that this year we could, despite the final race being, well, like this year and last year being probably later than ever, we've managed to publish at roughly the same time or earlier than ever as well. So yeah, I think we'll be all right next year as well. We're getting better and better at other people are getting better at organising us, so that's good.
Nice. I wanna wrap up with like hearing your thoughts on what you're most excited about for 2025. I'll give you some time to think about it by sharing mine. And it's Reece Wilson. I think Reece is one of the most exciting riders to watch, full stop. Like, I never tire of Reece sharing clips on his Instagram, because he's an incredible rider and definitely goes about things in a slightly different way to people on occasion, which I really like. But I think he's taking that to the extreme next year. And if the rumours are true, he's on the Gamux bike, which in itself is incredibly interesting and a real departure from kind of normal mountain bike technology, which is cool. But also, again, rumours, but a lot of out of industry support for that team. I believe Heather Wilson rumoured to be joining it as well, who's going to be battling in the junior women category again, incredibly fast rider. So those two, alongside which riders we don't know, but I think that I can't wait to see what they turn up with, what the infrastructure looks like, who they're getting support from, and whether we can see those riders putting those belt-driven bikes on the top steps of Podium. So I think that I can't wait to see how that pans out for 2025. Ben, what are you most excited about?
I mean, that's definitely quite exciting, and I guess it's sort of I guess that's a lot to be excited about, really good. But it is seeing how these teams are going to manifest. You know, like what will the teams look like? Because in some ways that could be really exciting. Excited for the racing as ever, I think. And as a purely fan point of view, more races is going to be more exciting in downhill. I think that's great. More racing. Yeah, excited for what. Yeah, also just finding out how everything's going to look. How, like, there's a lot of speculation at the minute. I'm excited for the speculation to end, I guess. Yeah, sorry, that's probably not the best of answers, but
go on then, James. What are you most excited about?
Oh, surprises. Everyone loves a surprise, don't they?
Depends whether the surprise impacts your living or not.
True. No, more specifically, I think Les Tuiles. I'm most excited about the Les Tuiles race. It's an hour and a bit from where I live. Awesome place to go and ride a bike. They've had, I think, four Enduro World Series, or actually only Enduro World Series races there already, and they've always been amazing terrain. Organisers really care about the racing, and then they've built this incredible downhill track as well, which anyone who's been riding there went riding there summer 2024 or late summer probably spied it. It's right underneath the chairlift. I went and had a little look from the chairlift as well. It's on this crazy steep hillside, loads of fresh sort of loamy dirt, really wide through the trees, massive jumps, massive tech stuff. I think it'll be really incredible, and like these perfect like turns and stuff like that. They've already had a couple of test sessions there with top riders, including Lo Bruni, Loris Vergier, and a ton of Italian riders who have been there already test riding it. So that just shows the level of involvement and commitment they have to running a good event. I think that's just going to be probably one of the best weekends of the year. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that would be good. And I'd love to say I'm excited about it, but I think the feeling I have for it is a nervousness. I'm nervous about Enduro. I'm hoping that we see some beginning of resurgence, and that we see, coverage improving. We see attendance there. We see teams coming together for it and support for it, not just within the sport, but from the fans as well, because I think that's been lacking. James, I don't know, you have some insight. I guess you're very close to that discipline. Like, is there an optimism there from your side?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm just so stumped with the coverage sort of thing, because I don't know what's gone wrong, because they're putting out really similar coverage, I think, to what they've always done. There's some incredible sort of drone footage and incredible shots that we see from all the races. And then Josh Carlson presenting was brilliant this year. I think I always loved Rick's presenting, and then last year he obviously just had such a big job with doing downhill and enduro, and then he wasn't always at the events, and then this year you got Carlson there, who knows the sport so well from having raced for many years. So he's got this great depth of knowledge and great enthusiasm for it. I think that really helped pick things up again. But then everyone says that there's no coverage, so I don't know what's missing there, like why it's not getting to people, because there's a lot of it, I think. And they do, when we've done we've looked at, for example, the Mountain Bike World Series Instagram. They're putting out a lot of posts from enduro races, like they are from downhill races, but people aren't seeing it, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think with the combined events, it can get lost in the mix. Like, I think those like almost halo live broadcasted events of XC and downhill take people's, people have only got so much time in a week to consume, and maybe it gets used up by those disciplines and makes it a little bit harder for enduro to stand out. And we've never had that in the past. So it was always a separate thing and had its attention because it was the big event on that weekend kind of thing, and it's maybe lost that.
On the ground, especially, you go to Leergang this year they had the live coverage of the last stage, and it was really cool. There's like a good bunch of fans and also like downhill racers there, like having a look. Like I said, the Lech was in Switzerland. That was amazing. It was such a good vibe. Amazing bunch of trails, amazing setting, and like the race ended in the middle of town in this like really. It's baking hot, but there's these big trees and they had tents set up, tons of people in there. It was like a Enduro World Cup race lands in your pub beer garden sort of thing. It was so nice. And then the same at the World Champs in Val d'Ifasa. Obviously it was slightly different vibe because it was so cold, but the way the whole event was showcased in this sort of central setting was so cool. And I think that's the positivity looking ahead. Is that you've got all these super committed organisers, and it does matter to them because not only do they love the sport, but also they're trying to show off their destination as mountain bike destination. So they're really committed to making these brilliant events. I think that'll carry on. There's a good lineup of venues for next year as well, all sort of quite well known and all in Europe again. I think it'll be super cool, to be honest.
Good. I've very much got my fingers crossed for that. We should start wrapping up, but I would encourage anyone who is a real fan of these disciplines to grab copies of Hurly-Burly and the World Stage. Like, they're incredible things to have. I've got a big stack downstairs, and I often dig into them and flip back. And even when people come to the house as well, they always love to get involved and have a look through. Ben, just take us through where to direct people, I guess, both to get copies of the books, but also to sign up to your newsletters, check out the interviews that Sven does. Like, there's loads of amazing stuff coming from you guys, which I do think brings an insight that doesn't live elsewhere.
Right, thank you, Chris. MisspentSummers.com /store, or just the homepage. You can find everything from there. And yeah, you can buy the books individually or as a bundle together and save a little bit of money. Also, newsletters at the bottom of every page. There's a sign up form to the newsletters, which is where we tell people about new products, new news, and our notes emails throughout the year, which I think are brilliant. I hope other people do. So MisspentSummers.com would be good. Cool.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll stick links to that stuff in the show notes so people can find it. But yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate what you do for starters. Like, it's incredible, and the sport would be a worse place without it. Hopefully everyone enjoys getting their books ahead of Christmas or on Christmas Day, unwrapping these amazingly beautiful memories from our sport. Thanks for taking time to sit down. It's been an incredible season of racing. We have got a lot of change going into 2025, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that stuff pans out. No doubt for some people it's going to be tough, for others it's going to be better, and I don't think we're going to know until we really get into the swing of the season. But one thing I am sure of is that we will have incredible racing across all the disciplines, because let's face it, the last few years have been better than ever from that perspective, and long may it continue. But yeah, thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks also for your efforts in reporting and dissecting the sport and telling people about it in a positive way as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Chris. And thanks to everyone that's bought or looked at anything we do. Appreciate it. And everyone that's involved in making them. It's quite a long list of people. So thank you.